Lighting is an essential requirement of filmmaking. So let's talk film. Hi, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren, the film student extraordinaire, and today we are talking all about lighting and its effect on mood in movies. This one's going to be a little bit of a longer video, and shout out to Jordan. And I'm hoping it'll be interesting. I'm going to do my best to put in examples of as I talk about things, because I know it can be hard to just imagine what I'm going to be saying and what you're going to be hearing. So I hope you guys like it. I think lighting is really cool, and I wish I was better at lighting for my stuff, because lighting makes such a huge difference. I mean, this is not a film set, but for just like an example, okay, it's also going to be dark because I don't have like my lights on back there. So right now I have my ring light on. If I turn it, okay, wrong direction. Okay, so if I turn it off, like I'm backlit, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's more from like the side, but you get the gist, right? And then as I turn it up, suddenly I'm frontally lit, and as it gets brighter, you see more. But not only do you see more in the sense that like you see me more, but I become the main focus, and the background, which still has light on it, is not as lit. So you're just not, hopefully you're looking at me more. That's like the whole point. So that was like a very stupid example, but I just want a quick indicator of how important lighting is. So yeah, and I guess Jordan's adjusting. This is also kind of obvious, but I hadn't really thought about it until I was rereading this textbook chapter, which is where I got pretty much all my information from. So I'm gonna comment with that. The textbook, I think, is just called Introduction to Film and Video Analysis. Yeah, pretty sure. Just kidding, that was the class. This book is called Film, A Critical Introduction. Okay, close enough. So this is interesting, but like obviously, in order for the camera to pick up on anything, light has to enter the lens. So like if I cover the lens, you don't see anything. Obvious, but also like, right? I mean, it's like, oh yeah. So that's why, in that sense, light is a requirement. If there's no light, nothing hits the camera. And especially for film, I mean, if light hit the camera before the film was developed, then it was like all ruined, because that was how the film, like that's how it worked. The light hit through the lens, and then where it hit on the film, that's how it became lights, darks, contrast, and everything. So just interesting stuff. Along with that, lighting is an element of the mise en scène, which illuminates, hides, and really brings out parts of the set and of course the actors to tell a story. It creates moods and effects through certain setups, and that's what the first chunk of this video is really going to be talking about. Those different setups, because that will help us understand how lighting accomplishes the director's and the filmmaker's goals, because it helps the audience understand more things. It can help them understand the character, certain actions, develops themes, and it establishes mood. All the setups have to do with the parts of lighting. So lighting has three attributes. It's quality, which can be hard or soft. It's placement, which is the direction from where the light is to the subject. And then it's contrast, which can be high or low. So we're gonna start just like going through all those things in order. Bear with me, I think it's really important to really understand what lighting is, because as we talk about the different things, I'm gonna put examples up on the screen, and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I never even realized like that was part of the reason for why I felt that way during that part of the movie, which is just amazing. Hard light is produced by a relatively small light source, which we put pretty close to the subject so that it can just go boom, like right on you. And this tends to be rather unflattering because it creates pretty deep shadows, and it emphasizes surface imperfections. And obviously you never hear imperfections with flattering. And this can be used to show like a harsh decision. The example I think I'm going to put here is from the Joan of Arc, where you're looking at like all the priestly people as they're looking down on Joan of Arc, and you see all their wrinkles, like all of their wrinkles, compared to soft light, which would be from a larger source, and this would be diffused over a bigger area. And I would say this ring light would be an example of that, because this is more flattering and it minimizes like facial imperfections and stuff like that. I mean, I think my skin looks really good with this ring light. Maybe you'll disagree, but it just kind of it looks like a nice soft light because it's coming out from this source. And not only are there lights there, but there's also a panel over the lights, and that helps to diffuse it and make it softer. And this is what most movies use, especially with their main characters, because they want everyone to look attractive. And now, of course, this is the light. The my ring light would be like a not a practical light because. Okay, I think the cat wants to leave. I would let him stay, but I don't want him to bother me for the rest of this video. The cat is out of the room. All right, so this light would be an artificial light, obviously, but we also have to consider natural light or available light. And this would be from the sun, because that is where we get our light in this world. So sunlight can be hard or soft as well, just based off like the daytime, what time of year it is, the angle, are there clouds? Because when there are clouds, that acts as a diffuser, really, which is why, like, sometimes you're trying to take a picture of somebody and they're like squinting, like if that's the sun's right on them, but when they're clouds, you're just like, huh, you know, exactly. So that's interesting. And depending on where you are and what time it is, the light can also vary in color. Fun fact, one of the reasons that filmmakers settled in LA, in California, to make movies was because of the nice golden color of the light there a lot. Also, think about like magic hour or golden hour, which is like right before sunrise, right after sunset, when the sun has that basky gold look and everyone on Instagram is like, you know, that's golden hour. And that's because the lighting does that. Like the natural available light is doing that. And you could do that with artificial lights just as well. Now we're gonna move on to light direction. And light direction produces a bunch of different effects. Okay, so I'm gonna act these out. So we have frontal lighting, which generally creates like a flat effect in the sense that you don't see really shadows on my face. There's a shadow like behind me, but you can't really see it because like I'm blocking it with everything, but you see there's a shadow there. So there really aren't shadows on my face, but we could also go from my side, which hopefully I'm in the camera. So when you see my side, then there's more of a sculpted effect. You see my profile, you see a little more detail, but this side you don't see at all. But this gets like those 3 dimensions because you can really see my face goes more than one way, versus from the front, like it's all just like one layer. I mean, obviously, you know, my nose sticks out, but hopefully you know what I mean. And then if I'm lit from the back, well, this actually won't really help because the light's still in front of me. I guess the lights would have been in front of me the whole time. Well, okay, if I was lit from the back, then I would be glowing. It'd be like a silhouette effect because there's no light in front of me that you couldn't see like my details, but you would see like a little halo around me. Okay, going back to the natural light thing, because I realized that this point should have been there, but I just see it in my notebook now. So documentary and low budget films tend to rely a lot on natural light because it's just cheaper, but they can also use artificial light, and they have to think about this lighting position when they light their subjects, like for interview, for a documentary, which I think is interesting. Now we're gonna talk about the 3-point lighting system, which has to do with the placement and directionality of lights. And this is the Hollywood Studios system, which would be 3-point lighting. So this has remained standard since that time, and its method is really supposed to ensure that there's a good level of illumination on the subjects and that shadows are, for the most part, eliminated, except of course, like a little shadow's okay, but not too much. So the primary source of light would be the key light. So for me, I only have 2 lights on in this room, and the key light would obviously be my ring light, which is in front of me. This is aimed at me, the subject, and it could be aimed at me from a variety of positions. This is just, of course, frontal because it is a vlog type video. So then we have the fill light, which would be the reflecting surface. I guess technically for me, I do have a fill light, and that would be the wall, because the light, it bounces off the wall and back towards the camera and the light, which is pretty cool. And this is on the opposite side of the subject. So so the light's in front of me, the wall behind me, and this helps to eliminate the shadows cast. So as you can see, there is a shadow on the wall, but it's not super harsh, and that is partially because of the light kind of filling the room from this light, which is cool. Then we also have the backlight, which would be aimed at the subject from behind. The closest thing in this example would be maybe the light on my wall over there. And that's just because it adds a bit more light to the situation and it helps separate the subject from the background. I don't know if like this isn't really relevant just because of the fact that I really only have one camera set up, but I'm just kind of like trying to come up with an example to help. But I will put up a picture where you really see like the actual 3-point lighting, and I've done this like in class before. This is like the thing you do all the time, and when you check out a beginner light kit that has 3 lights in it. When you use a backlight, if you use a backlight with a minimal key or fill effect, then you get the silhouette with the backlit scenario, which is cool. Then there's eye lights, and this kind of also is like an eye light because there's like the light right in my eyes, and that would be shown, but in an actor it wouldn't be a ring because they don't want to be like, oh, there's obviously a fake light there, and that adds that little gleam in their eyes and you see the light touch them, which adds, you know, just more drama and it just looks better. And those could also be called Obi lights based off the fact that they are named for Meryl Oberon, who was the actress for which they were developed, which is fun. I would love to have lights named after me. Now we're gonna move on to image contrast. And this is one of the more important factors in establishing mood in particular, because this depends on the relative intensity of the key light to the fill light. So the ratio would be key to fill, and it's also known as the lighting ratio. And I want to say that this is counterintuitive because the higher the ratio, the more okay, let me just like, I'll give an example. So high key lighting is when the lighting design has a key to fill ratio of 2:1 or lower. So the fill light is nearly as intense as the key light. So there should be like almost no shadows. And this is like for a hopeful, happy, cheery mood because shadows are dark and depressing. So a good example of this would be from The Sound of Music with Maria, like it's like in the beginning, happy part, not with the Nazi part. But like when everything's all good, like there's lots of light everywhere because everyone's happy. Then we have like natural key lighting or like normal lighting, and this is produced by a ratio of key to fill light between 4:1 and 8:1. And the fill doesn't eliminate every shadow. This is more for like maybe a neutral mood, just like the everyday, like maybe not super overly happy, but it's not a depressing mood. It's just kind of like this is life. And so it's getting less intense. So like the bigger the number in the blank to 1, the less intense it gets. So that's like the counterintuitive part. And then we have low key lighting. So this is when you increase, okay, so maybe the saying intense was wrong, but the higher the intensity, the lower the contrast. Okay, hopefully that makes better sense. So because low key lighting is when the key light is even more intense relative to the fill light. So this ratio would be between 16:1 and 32:1. And this has lots and lots of shadows. So this would be often used in like a crime, like film noir, darker depressing scenes. And this adds just like, there's lots of shadow, as I said, lots of shadows, lots of contrast. A lot of this would be on the characters' faces because like maybe they're in turmoil, something's happening, or it's like the villain and you're just seeing like all this evil and darkness around them. And this goes to be for like gothic horror, so it's really interesting stuff, and I just think that's just fascinating how the light does that, and we don't even necessarily think about its effects on us. We just like experience it as it happens. This is also kind of obvious, but I just want to make sure it comes across because a lot of film things that we learn about in class are like, oh duh, but we just didn't think about it. And that is that you can use this different lighting styles in the same movie. A movie doesn't have to always be super high contrast or low contrast. As I was saying with The Sound of Music, when things take a darker turn, then the lighting becomes more low key because we're kind of getting like versus like Hopefully that was as interesting to you as it is to me, and if it was, please give this video a thumbs up. Remember to comment down below anything you want, maybe like what's your favorite type of lighting, or what, I don't know, like what lighting do you like to have even in your own room? Like, do you like to have that really bright space, or do you like to have a little darker space? Does that give you a certain mood? And remember to subscribe because this is Film Friday and I post every week. Bye!